Okay, Matt, you're not a lawyer, completely different occupation.
Have you got a photo of Humphrey Appleby up there?
Yeah, no, we haven't got that.
Good.
But here I go, looking through Department of Environment and Water at the moment. That's your responsibility. You're trying to contribute to South Australia's economic development. We're all keen on that one.
Well, you need to speak up.
I need to speak. Oh, okay. Well, you need to speak up on the microphone. Thank you. And basically, you manage all the key tourism, iconic tourism things around Adelaide, Kangaroo Island, Cleveland Park. You've been involved in this new thing going down at York.
Yep.
Oh dear. And in the past, I read you were the chair of a retirement village.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
So that'll come in handy as Adelaide gets older.
Yeah.
You were on the Global Affairs for the EU, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
The board member for the EU Centre for Global Affairs?
At Adelaide Uni, yeah.
At Adelaide Uni?
Yes.
Oh, so you operated...
Yeah, it was just a little advisory board here. It really wasn't very... Where did you get that one from? That's not what I sent you. It's true, but...
I did some more searching. And, yeah, so infrastructure, tourism, heritage, there's a lot there.
Yeah, so I do work in the Department for Environment and Water. I've been there for about 2 years, and I have a fairly large portfolio of things relating to sustainable development and economic development. So the bits of our department that the state derives some economic dividend from, I look after those areas, and we try and maximise the opportunities to create jobs and prosperity, but we do it in a way that is hopefully not having a negative impact on the environment. I do have a fairly big team around me, so I'm not trying to do all that on my own. I've got a team of, must be in the order of 300 people. One of my colleagues, Meredy, is actually here, so I can't tell a lie tonight.
We could get Meredy.
You should ask Meredy. She'll tell you. Meredy and I work very closely together, and she's a very solid, important part of the department. But yeah, my background, I guess, is economic development. I've been in the public sector about 20 years. Soon into my time in the public service.
What about the Yes Minister bit you were talking about when you said you were Humphrey Appleby?
Oh, well, I guess probably like lots of you, I grew up watching Yes Minister and Yes Prime Minister, and so Humphrey stands out as the most extraordinary public servant, I guess. And but no, there's not a lot of that, but there are some points of resonance with the show, certainly.
Okay. Now, people may not know that you have a cuddly side, so I just want to put a picture up here, and I'd like you to explain to us what this is about. And if we put the next slide up.
Oh, yeah. Gosh, you have done your research. So that was a little promotional ride that I got going a couple of weeks ago. We started something, a fundraising initiative for koala research. Well, don't be tricked a bit just because koalas are a bit overabundant in the Adelaide Hills and on KI. They're not in a particularly sustainable state. They're racked with all sorts of disease and genetic issues, and we're trying to raise money for koala research, believe it or not. And one of our ambassadors on this initiative is a guy called Phil Liggett, who, if anyone into cycling, you probably know Phil. He's known as the voice of cycling. He's a big naturalist, and I asked Phil to lead this little ride that we did, and that was the map. And you can see the CBD of Adelaide there and the Adelaide Hills, and we rode that with a number of business operators in Australia who are committed to nature-based tourism in particular. So it was just a bit of fun, really.
Okay. Well, it's nice to know Department of Environment and Water actually put their money where their mouth is.
Yeah.
Ride for koalas.
We try.
Great.
Yeah.
Take us on a bit of a cook's tour of your work life so far.
Yeah, so I was just saying when we had an election in 2002, some of you remember, and Mike Rand came into power, he established something called the Economic Development Board, chaired by a guy called Robert Champion de Crespigny. And Robert was a pretty significant guy in mining, in particular in Australia. And he headed up this board of about 13, and I became executive officer to that board, I guess fairly early in my career, and so I was often out of my depth and struggling.
Without us trying to work out your age, how approximately?
43.
Oh, sorry. No, I didn't mean to ask your age now. I meant, how old were you then when you did that?
27, I think. 27, 26,
Okay.
yeah. So I studied a few different things at uni, settled on economics in the end, and graduated as a 24-year-old and did a few different things in government, and then ended up working with Robert. And it was really a bit of a kind of a lucky break, you might say.
Yeah.
But of course, we'd sort of hoped that God's hand was on it and there was a sense of purpose to it. But it kind of did set my career on a particular kind of path. And it gave me the opportunity to engage with people and ideas and, I guess in some ways, processes that you normally wouldn't get exposed to quite that early. And so that was, I think, helpful. I did that for about 3 years. Then I moved into the Premier's office for one particular project that went for about 4 months. Then I moved into the Department of Premier and Cabinet. I was there for about maybe 2 years, and then I moved out to consulting world. I didn't enjoy consulting a lot. It was okay, but I was sort of working for larger companies and prosecuting what they wanted, but not shaping it a lot, and I didn't enjoy that. Came back into government and took on a role heading up what was called then the Social Inclusion Unit, which was a social policy reform headed up by the Catholic Vicar General, a guy called Monsignor David Capo. So I worked there for a few years, not looking after, but trying to drive improvements, reform in social service delivery. So largely, intractable problems, rough sleeping, homelessness, substance abuse, mental health, those sorts of areas, which obviously remain very significant challenges. Then I moved to London, and I got asked to apply for a job over in the UK. The government of South Australia has a small office in London, and I went over there as what we call the Deputy Agent General. All of the states have agent generals in London, which sounds slightly anachronistic, but it's kind of like the governor in reverse. The governor is the Queen's representative here in South Australia. The agent general is the Premier's representative in London. So I went over there, and that was a big sort of change, and took the family over and went for 2 years, stayed for about 4.5 years, then came back about 4 years ago. Do you want me to keep going or not? That's probably enough. I'm getting bored.
That's fascinating,
Yeah.
actually. What was the highlight in all that? I mean, obviously now you love what you're doing, but when you look back on that?
Oh, I think, I don't know if there were highlights. I mean, I love people, like we all probably love people, but people, interest me a lot, and what drives people and just people's abilities and talents and applications. So I've met a lot of interesting people. That's been a great kind of privilege, and the relationships that have formed out of that.
Can I ask you, how do you keep yourself anchored, remembering that you're just another person with everyone? Because you're mixing with quite a lot of high-flying people.
Have you met Esther, my wife?
Your wife keeps you
When I told her I was doing this, she said, Craig should be interviewing me. Like, why would he want to interview you? No, I think I don't know how I keep anchored really. I mean, I'm a Christian, so I guess I kind of keep that helps one keep a perspective. I'm ever mindful of kind of the things, my failings and my inadequacies, and so that sort of keeps it real. And I think, I don't know, just an awareness of who I am, and my propensity to not do well or to do the wrong thing, or let people
so that
down.
realism
I guess,
about
yeah.
human beings.
Yeah.
What sort of pressures have you been under in those sort of public servant roles?
Yeah, I don't know if there's been many that are distinctive to like external pressures. I think the demands of the job I've often found overwhelming and have struggled with. And when one becomes overwhelmed by the task, you either kind of quit or you press in harder. And I think my tendency has been to press in harder. And so there's been times in the last 20 years where I've not, for example, had good work-life balance, and probably other relationships have suffered because of that.
How did you correct that?
I'm still trying to correct it. It's certainly better now than it was, and that's partly because I've got people like Meredy who work very hard. But I do delegate a lot more than I used to, and I guess when you delegate, you have to trust people, and most time people do what you hope, but sometimes they don't, and they do things that surprise you, and you think, why would you do that? But you can't say that, and you work with people, and you understand that you're a part of a team, and you have a particular role. Other people have that role, their role, and we work together, and I lean on other people a lot, and so that lightens my load. But then I have to be ready to take responsibility for things when they go wrong.
Yes. Okay. Has winning been a pressure in the role you've been in?
Yeah, it has been. I mean, this is this kind of question of competition, and I am a very competitive person, I would say. I do like to compete, and I realised very early on in the public sector that has to be managed carefully beyond, any kind of Christian sense for why you don't want to be competitive, but just at a practical level in the workplace, it doesn't work to want to stand out too much. So I think I've tried to, over the years, develop a sense of purposefulness, if that's a word. So what is my purpose here? What am I actually working for beyond the day-to-day? But in terms of my Christian, the fact that I'm a Christian in the workplace, so it removes the tension from sort of moment to moment, and avoids sort of ugliness in the main. And I think, a sense of purpose, and trying to cultivate a sense of purpose and larger objective rather than petty kind of competitiveness helps me work through that. Okay.
Because it sort of keeps you at a higher level. Is that what you...
Maybe. Doesn't sound good like that, does it?
Well,
I'm trying to win ultimately.
Well, I hadn't thought that far ahead, but yeah, maybe.
I think. I mean, sometimes you just have to try and recognise that characteristic, and sort of kill it. And most competitiveness is probably rooted in insecurity. So I'm probably a deeply insecure person. But I think trying to anchor yourself around the fact that you're in the workplace, that you are a part of God's work in this world, in this city, in this state, and it removes that need to compete, because you're drawn into a different sort of work and engagement.
So for you, where do you think you've learnt to be distinctive as a Christian in your job?
That is definitely one we should ask Meredy. And I think I think in many ways I'm not distinctive, sadly, Andrew. I mean, I was very challenged by your address. I think at a personal, one-to-one level, I'm probably distinctive with certain people. So when you manage staff, it becomes amazing how most people are always going through crisis or challenge. It's the human life. But that was amazing to me when I started managing staff, many, many years ago, just the sort of challenges people were going through at a day-to-day level. And you try and connect with that and help people at that individual, not just kind of pat in the back. And look, the other thing I was thinking, the workplace has changed so much in the past 20 years. I mean, at one level, if you're not speaking about the gospel and your faith commitment and what Christ means to you, it is actually hard to be distinctive because the workplace is such a clean environment now. I mean, 20 years ago, the sorts of behaviours that went on in the workplace, you know, it was a different world. People would scream, yell, throw things. If you were briefing a minister and he didn't like it, he'd rip it up, you know, and throw it at you. You know, I never had that, but I saw it happen. You know, there was that aggressiveness in the workplace. It's just not there, or in the public sector now, or it's very isolated, you know, instances that have to be addressed sort of individually. So probably, I just think at different times, the people that I've been working with, there have been, you know, plenty of times when I have been able to engage people in issues of faith, and just even little things like, you know, I'll pray for you, or it's just easy to bring God into those one-to-one situations. You know, you have to be careful, I guess, as a manager, that you don't use your position to impose a worldview or a faith view. Certainly, I have to be careful of that in my
especially
workplace.
if people are trying to climb the ladder in their job and they think,
Yeah.
I'll do whatever you think is
Yeah, that's right.
a good belief.
Yeah.
I've watched Matt at his work interacting with people and thought how down to earth he can be with people. So certainly that's where I think you've been distinctive, that I've seen anyway. And also just the wrestling through of how to deal with people. That's certainly been a feature. So that's feedback for you.
Thank you.
Can you please put your hands together for Matt, and thank you for coming.